So this is the practical application post for my episode titled Movement is a Lifestyle with Ben Reuter. A couple of my big takeaways. We started off the episode with a story that he would tell his classmates. In that story, he was contrasting two individuals. The first individual was the oldest finisher of the Hawaiian Ironman, who spent a lot of his years riding his bike and then ended up passing away. He died of a massive stroke while riding his bike. The second individual broke their hip at around 80 years old. And in the 1960s, when you break your hip, you usually didn't give you surgery because your lifespan probably wouldn't be that much longer anyway. This person defied the odds and lived about another 20 years. And when you contrast the two, it makes me think a lot about health span. Health span is how long do you live in good health. That first individual probably had good health all the way until the last years of his life. He was able to do what he loved all the way until the end. The second individual probably spent those last 20 years thinking or wishing that they could do what they used to be able to do, and it might have been a slow decline and maybe not the best way to spend the last 20 years of your life. It also makes me think of quote from Teddy Roosevelt, which is a lot around, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's to wear out or to rust out. And I always say it's my personal philosophy to wear out, but I think it's more than just a philosophy nowadays. It's very much so rooted in science. People who wear out, it preserves their body and their brain in ways that the alternative cannot. Dying, doing what you love, and being able to do those things all the way to the end, versus the alternative, maybe you suffer from dementia, cardiovascular disease, and it's potentially, someone can say, more suffering involved. And another individual I'll mention is Peter Attia. This is outside of the episode, but he often says that people who have health span, the last couple years of their life is this quick and fast decline. And you think about that stroke on your bicycle. Whereas people who don't have health span, those last years of their life are going to be usually a slow decline. And when you think about the two, I think I'd much rather the axe. And it's also, again, highlighting that idea of health span and being able to do what you love as long as possible. So Ben was saying, when you are active today and you exercise today, you're preserving yourself to be able to have health span as you age. So it was a nice little motivational beginning. After we talked about the story, we dove into some components of fitness and started talking about that. He recommended exercising outside of the gym. So whether you do something you love, biking, running, whatever it is, in addition to that, everybody should still lift. He said over time, throughout life, you're going to develop movement imbalances, and it's important to be able to combat those imbalances with being able to do some strength training. I would also add, and this is coming from me, but the fact that muscle is so important as we age. It's important for metabolic health, but it's also important for function. You're not going to be able to do what you love to do without muscle. I'm not necessarily saying that you have to be a bodybuilder, but you do have to preserve muscle. And as we age, muscle starts to deteriorate very fast. And there's nothing that's going to preserve muscle as good as resistance training. Now, exercising outside of the gym, running, all that stuff is going to be able to help, but the decline starts to happen very fast, and there's really no way to preserve it as well as structured resistance training. So whether you could still do resistance training outside of the gym, whether it's calisthenics or something else or something that you have at home, suspension trainers, weights, whatever it is, but everybody should incorporate it. I would also add, even if you're not getting into your older years, when you're young, you're preserving those habits so that when you get older, right, you're going to be much more likely to incorporate resistance training. I would also say that it's kind of like a fitness retirement plan. So the more muscle you have stacked up in younger years, the more you have to lose in your older years. It's just like a bank account. The more money you have, it'll last a little bit longer. So it's not just for elderly, but it's going to be for everyone to preserve those habits and preserve as much muscle as you can. So everybody, no matter what activity you're doing outside or in your life, should also incorporate some type of resistance training. Now when it comes to conditioning, aerobic, anaerobic, all that good stuff there, we talked a lot about exercising outdoors. Now you can do this indoors, and Ben would say if you love doing it indoors, keep doing it indoors. Whatever gets you moving is awesome. So if you can function that way, it works well for you, great, don't stop doing it. Another great way to do it though is outside. Whether you play a game, a sport, whether you go hiking, whether you bike. You know, right here in Brooklyn where I am, there's tons of people running around Prospect Park. I love to mention Ultimate Frisbee because I've been incorporating that a lot in my routine recently. Every Tuesday, Thursday, I play Ultimate Frisbee. There's people who I see in the morning, they're riding on the green belt over here, and they ride their bicycle. You know, Ben mentioned one of the great things about the outdoors is that the scenery tends to change, and it's never the same thing twice. Right? Whether it's different people, different animals, different plant life, different seasons, the outdoors is a bit more dynamic, it's changing, and you know that lends to some other benefits in the body. But so exercising outdoors is great, but one of the problems we run into is how do we track it? It's very easy to track inside a gym, right? You can see exactly how many miles per hour you're running, you can see how long you did it for, what's your heart rate, all that stuff. When you're on a treadmill, it's very easy. But so one of the things that he recommended was a chest strap. I'm wearing one right now because I was using it earlier, right? So a chest strap is just about as accurate as an EKG. I'm also wearing a watch. You can monitor your heart rate with a watch, but he said sometimes it's not as accurate, whether it's the pigment on your skin, tattoos, even if you squeeze a little harder, it could change, but it's not as accurate, but it's still a great tool as well. I was inspired to buy the chest strap after our episode. I already had one, but I misplaced it, haven't used it for a while. It was a good reminder for me. But when you're monitoring your heart rate, how many steps you take in a day, or in your exercise routine, you're kind of getting an idea of what you're doing, and then you can progress, right? Just like weightlifting in a gym. Am I doing 3 sets of 10 one week, then I do 4 sets of 10, or I do 3 sets of 12, or instead of lifting 70 pounds, I lift 75 pounds. I can properly progress. I can also avoid doing too much too soon. If I see 1 week I did 80,000 steps, and then the next week I did 10,000 steps. There's this inconsistency there. So the nice piece about monitoring steps and monitoring heart rate and intensities and workouts and things like that with things like a chest strap is it can help you to avoid maybe potential injuries and can help to keep you on a nice solid progression and track. So in addition to that, we also talked about training in different zones, right? So there is, for example, low intensity and high intensity. I'll make it super simple, dividing it that way. Low intensity, you think about something like a marathon run or long distance running. High intensity, you think like HIIT training, high intensity intervals. When I'm playing Ultimate Frisbee, I'm definitely doing a high intensity sprint, and then I'm doing some low intensity stuff in between, then a sprint again, and most sports incorporate some of that high intensity interval training. But should we do both? When it comes to conditioning, low intensity and high intensity both are going to provide benefits to your heart and to your metabolism or to your mitochondria and all those things as well. One isn't necessarily superior, right? I could do all low intensity stuff like marathon running and reap those aerobic benefits. I could do all high intensity interval training and reap those conditioning benefits as well, where my heart's going to become more efficient and I'm going to build more mitochondria. The mitochondria might get more dense. A lot of these things are very similar, but how do they differ? And this is one thing that did come from Ben, and he said when you do high intensity work, while you might get more done in less time, and you're able to reap benefits in less time, it does come with more stress on the body and more recovery. So you have to consider that as well. Like, I might do a high intensity workout today. It might take me 2 days to recover, 3 days to recover. Aerobic low intensity work I could probably do every single day. So you're considering training across the spectrum. Incorporate both low and high intensity stuff. Generally speaking, this is something that's also coming from me. I always say that when it comes to health, variety is key. So you don't want to overuse one system again and again. You don't want to just keep doing long distance running. When it comes to health, you want to go and train across the spectrum. You also want your body to be able to respond, in any of those scenarios, right? I want to be able to, if I'm running across the street because I was about to get hit by a car, I want to know that I can move explosively and high intensity. And maybe if I need to do something for long endurance, I want to be able to have that tool also. So just generally speaking in life, you want to have access to more tools. The more tools you have access to, the better responses that you can have to things. So we talked a lot about the training zones there. The last and final piece that we talked about was the importance of every once in a while, periodically visiting a trained professional, whether it's a personal trainer or a physical therapist, to get, really evaluate you, assess you, make sure you're moving well, or checking for imbalances or areas that you might be good at or not so good at, and really getting a professional to give you some guidance. Then this way, when you're doing the workouts and things on your own, you can do it with confidence, and maybe every once in a while you go back to them, kind of like a doctor when you go for a checkup visit or something like that. He talked about the importance of movement assessments. That's something he mentioned a couple of times, and a personal trainer, a physical therapist can do that as well. Are you lifting with proper technique? Do you have these muscle imbalances, etc.? So we talked about monitoring our aerobic and anaerobic fitness. We talked about lifting for resistance training, but it is also important to have movement quality and to be able to move well. And a fitness professional can really monitor and assess all of these things and give you guidance on all of those things. So, I know that was a long practical application, but there was so many gems in there. Ben tends to align with a lot of the things I feel are important and good messages that people need to hear. And so it was really cool to have him on. It was really cool to hear him and his wisdom. So check out the episode, and thank you for tuning in.